I am going to introduce our presenter, who is Rene Langen. So Rene has been working as the mental health lead at the Blue Water District School Board for the past several years. And she also has 30 years of experience in psychotherapy and counseling, mainly with children and youth, but also adults and families. And she's worked in a variety of clinics, both here in Ontario and also in the Yukon. She and I were just actually having a conversation about the Yukon not very long ago. And she's just in the process of getting ready to launch her own psychotherapy consulting service called Black Bear Psychotherapy. And it's kind of moving on into the next stage for her. So we're really, really excited that she has been able to join us today and is going to talk to us a little bit about just some different techniques and processes that we can use in order to try to help us navigate our way as things continue to change through, being in complete lockdown. And now we're sort of moving into the next stage, which means maybe we're going to be into groups of people again. And it's hard for me, I know, to wrap my head around the fact that maybe I'm going to be in rooms or in spaces with 50 or 100 people there. And that can cause a little bit of anxiety as well. So Rene's here to sort of give us some pointers and some tips and some suggestions of ways that we can combat any of that anxiety that we're feeling right now. So welcome, Rene, and thanks for coming.
Well, thank you, Tara, and thank you, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. Over the years, I've heard about WI because my mother and father-in-law lived in Lucknow in their retirement years, and my mother-in-law was always going to WI meetings, and I never knew what a WI was. And I hope this presentation connects with your mission statement. When I did a bit of digging in the background and I look at your mission statement for the Women's Institute being working together for a safe, healthy communities and pursuing enriched and balanced lifestyles. That's what mental health and well-being is all about. And I hope that fits well with your mission statement today. So I put this together knowing all our time is precious. It is kind of a passion of mine, this whole flourishing, positive psychology, well-being movement. It's really come about in the last 10 years, really, and I'll give you some history of that. But I hope you find the presentation interesting and informative and entertaining. And if you do fall asleep, that's okay too, because maybe you just need a nap. We're all in that age and stage, aren't we? So thank you very much for the invitation to join you. So I want to start by acknowledging that we're meeting on the traditional land of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. And for those of you joining us from other jurisdictions and other nations that you may be resting on as well. Which is, for our area, it's the Saugeen First Nation, the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation, and we also think about our Métis nations of Ontario, whose history and people are well represented throughout Canada and Grey Bruce counties. I also want to invite you to use the chat line. If there's anything that kind of resonates for you or any questions or comments you'd like to make along the way, Tara will monitor that as well. One of my favorite poets, and you might know her if you're an Oprah fan. Yeah, I am. Gee, when I first moved to the Yukon and I knew I didn't know a soul and I truly was alone. And my husband Peter would come home from work and he'd say, well, what did you do that was significant today? And I said, I had tea with Oprah. And she spoke a lot about one of her mentors and a brilliant African-American woman who's since passed, Maya Angelou. And she wrote a poem. Actually, I got this book from my mother-in-law who gave it to me. And it's called Alone. And I thought of this through this whole pandemic thing that we've all been going through. And it really speaks to lying, thinking last night, how to find my soul a home, where water is not thirsty and bread is not stone. I came up with one thing, and I don't believe I'm wrong, that nobody, but nobody, can make it out there alone. And, certainly we've been challenged as we've been told to isolate, told to stay at home, told we're in lockdown, told we're can't go anywhere, can't go to our happy places, our cottages, our trailers, our special places, sometimes even our favorite hikes or walks, etc. it's sure been a whirlwind, hasn't it? But in terms of being human, we're hardwired to be social. This is quite the challenge. And I think we've found many creative ways. And if anything, we've all come to a deeper understanding, perhaps, and creative ways of staying connected. Maybe we've just gotten, I don't know about you, but I've had to learn so many new technology platforms. I didn't think this old dinosaur brain could do it. But my technology use has come along, and if in doubt, call Tara.
Yeah.
But it's really been a challenge to stay connected, and I worry about, and I feel for people that don't have technology, like my mother and father-in-law, who are 102 and 96 years old. Boy, I wish they had been tuned into technology. It's been hard staying connected with some of our seniors that don't have it. But I'm going to talk a lot about this, the importance of being socially connected and what the research tells us on that. Why, yes, I am a bit stressed. I'm a psychotherapist, and there's been moments I've lost it. And you know what? We're in an abnormal situation. So it's not that we're all suffering from psychological disorders. We're just doing a normal response to an abnormal situation. I don't know about you, but I always heard buzz that I've taken emergency training and emergency preparedness training. And I was the Yukon lead in the Yukon in the event that we had a major disaster. That was going to be my role, to coordinate services for children and youth. But, hearing about it and experiencing it is two different things. And we're constantly given mixed messages and opposite messages. Stay connected, but socially distance. And how do we stay well physically, emotionally, spiritually? How do we even figure out all these rules and zones and changes? There's a lot to wrap your brain around. And how do we continue to stay there for our family and friends and neighbors and for ourselves? But many of our friends and our families and our neighbors have had pre-existing stressors, struggles, challenges going on in their lives. And then you add another layer of new stressors. And how do we all get through this together? And now, here we go again, right? We've turned the corner, we flipped the coin. Here's our next challenge. How do we prepare to evolve back into post-pandemic life, or our new normal? You've probably heard that phrase a time or two. What will it look like? I have a wonderful retreat, my mobile home in Red Bay, and I went down to see the sunset the other night, and I had a moment of panic because there were lots of people and nobody was wearing a mask. And I didn't know whether somebody had sent out a memo and I didn't get it, or what this was about. Why aren't they wearing masks? Um, what am I missing? I've got a mask right here. I've got it on my face. I'm the only one with a mask on. And then I kind of looked around and realized, oh, it's kind of my age group, maybe a little bit younger. We're all socially distanced. Some are wearing masks. I just didn't see them. But we're all kind of like paying attention. And I figured probably most of us are feeling a layer of confidence having received the vaccination. But still, it's trying to wrap your head around what are the new rules, expectations, and what should we be doing as we get through this next stage. And everyone's doing it a little different. And honestly, I think people are kind of tired of being told what to do. So we're all just doing the best we can to stay safe and keep the other people around us safe. But how do we re-engage, become more social, decrease our anxiety? I was a little anxious, even though I was outdoors in a public space. And what do we bring with us after this year and a half? I know from reading the research that lots of people have suffered PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because their lives have changed or been impacted. Social anxiety before may have grown to the point of isolation, felt like a kind of a cushy comfort or a comfort blanket. And now we're expected to get back into semi-normal life. What about folks that have social anxiety or just increased anxiety? How is that going to work? Or what about depression, distress, adjustment disorders? I was on a provincial meeting last week, with my guiding body, School Mental Health Ontario, for my other life, my regular job. And Sick Kids Hospital has put out some statistics that surprisingly, we don't have an increase in children and youth having increases in mental health disorders, but we do have an increase in distress, feeling anxious, feeling distressed. And we'll see where that will evolve to once we all re-engage and once we get back into a more normal life. And then I think about loss. And for people who have had losses through the pandemic or because of the pandemic, how is this impacting them? How our rituals, celebrations, and goodbyes have had to change. Where do we go from here? What about our institutions we are used to frequenting? Do we go back? Do we evolve? Do we stay the same? Do we move to a different place? So we know in order to change behavior, just to throw you into a little bit of a cognitive behavior therapy lecture, that it takes at least 3 weeks of practicing something new before that behavior feels normal and feels okay and feels like, yeah, this is a no-brainer. So over the pandemic, I knew I was sitting at my desk in my home-based office in front of a computer screen too long. I know better. So I pushed myself to start walking, a significant walk, at least 4 times a week. Well, I'm into week 18. So it takes time to build, but now it's a no-brainer. Oh, it feels like I need to stretch, I need to walk. The body reacts. So we've been a year and a half in a pandemic. We have changed our behavior. As we evolve forward, the 3-week rule may help us to become re-engaged. It may not feel comfortable. Any change doesn't, but we have to kind of move forward in a new way and think about the new way is going to take practice. It's not going to be automatic because we've been too long not doing our old ways. There's a psychologist, Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's really a guru of mindfulness. And he really brought this secular tradition to North America. And he's done a lot of work in using mindfulness for all sorts of psychological distress disorders, also for people coping with illness, all sorts of things. And I like this statement a lot. There's a lot more right with us than there is wrong. If you connect to the internet, anytime you open the news, I don't know about you, but I'm so sick of you seeing that ugly coronavirus thingy model with spikies all over it. Like, do we really have to keep seeing that? We all know what it looks like by now. Can't we put in a happy face or something, or, a comic? Hey, we're going to talk about coronavirus today and we're doing well. Because there is a lot more right with us than there is wrong. We've all rallied to the challenge and we've done very well with the challenges. And I see I have a reminder here in the chat line, just to invite you to write in the chat line, if you would like, some of your own resiliency and well-being strategies. What have you done to stay well? What have you intentionally put in place for your own life? We started off, and I think, was it Terry? One of the Terrys was talking about going for a hike today and sharing a new hike spot that she found, a little gem in our midst. What have been some of your strategies? We'd love to hear the Colpoy's Bay strategies, and also for folks who are joining us from farther afar. What have you done to help cope and to really feel like life's not so bad? Winston Churchill said, walking up to 1,300 kilometers since this all started. Sharon, wow. Thank you for sharing that. Wow, that's impressive. Winston Churchill said, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And isn't that the truth? In fact, I'm going to go back and put my research hat on again. Research has actually shown that we get more joy and more pleasure by what we give than what we get. Just think of your own personal experiences. When you say you give someone a gift, you put a lot of thought into that gift and you knew it was the perfect gift. They so wanted this. And you see the joy on their face when they open it. Doesn't that just top the cake? We all like to get gifts, but there's nothing like that feeling of putting joy in someone else's face and hearing them say, "This is perfect. How did you know I wanted this? Oh my gosh, I can't wait to try this." When I do presentations with kids, I have them share their experiences of volunteering because that's part of being in school as well. You have to accumulate so many volunteer hours. And their faces light up when they talk about what they do to help others. So here's a fellow, Dr. Martin Seligman is a psychologist with Penn State University in Pennsylvania. And he was a psychologist, researcher, professor for years. And his focus of study was depression and anxiety and treatment. He met with folks who were challenged with depression and anxiety, sometimes very severe symptoms. And then one day he paused and he thought, wait a minute, what about the people that are doing very well? Or what about the people who have overcome depression and anxiety? What are they doing that we might all learn from? So he kind of shifted his focus and he started examining and really researching well-functioning people. And he came up with this quote: well-being cannot just be feeling good. There are different components. And in fact, he came up with a recipe, which I think should be posted far and wide. In fact, when I was in the Yukon, I worked with a team of psychotherapists and psychologists, and we actually put a Yukon-wide billboard and campaign out, mail out, all on this flourishing concept under our chief psychologist for everyone to have the same recipe and at least to know what you can do. And it does have to do with having meaning in your life, good relationships, and accomplishment. And we'll get more into that. So flourishing, not languishing. Languishing is the opposite of flourishing. To flourish is to enjoy life, cope with life's difficulties, because we'll all have them, and we'll all have lemonades thrown at us from time to time, and those lemons will throw us off. Sorry, lemons at us, not lemonades. We need to make lemonade, right? We need to feel we have a place in the world and to believe that we have something we can give to others. So Seligman and others talk about the different states or personality states. We all kind of lean somewhere, especially between the pessimist and the optimist. So the pessimist, I like this cartoon, would say, now that I have quaffed this lemonade, the cup is half empty. The optimist would say, lo, sweet fortune, I'm parched, and here before me is a cup half full of lemonade. Now, the realist might say, who the heck drank my urine sample? But you get the point. Seligman would say, personality, character-wise, he leaned more on the on the pessimistic side. He could be prone to low mood, kind of feeling grumpy, feeling like nothing ever works well, goes right, everything's half empty. Then when he started doing the research, he started to see that, wait, this is something within my power that I can change. And he came up with this model, or I like to call it a recipe, flourishing. And along the left-hand side is an acronym called PERMA. P stands for positive emotions. E is engagement. R is relationships. M is meaning. And A is accomplishments. But one more click, Tara, because there's no getting around it, ladies. We have to have physical activity. It does stimulate the feel-good hormones, the endorphins, the dopamines, the serotonins in our brain. In fact, oftentimes physical activity has been found in research to be as effective as medication in treating depression and anxiety. So it's really important that we have all of these things in our life. I want to reference back to School Mental Health Ontario. And for those of you who are grandparents, parents, or aunts or uncles of children, I just wanted to let you know we're doing a lot under an organization. It was called School Mental Health Assist. It's now School Mental Health Ontario, to really work from junior kindergarten all the way to grade 12 to reinforce the importance of mental health and well-being. Mental health is on the continuum of our health. We all have it. Some days it's better than others, but we've ignored this for years within our country, really. And there's been a deliberate and a wonderful program put in place within the province of Ontario that I can't say enough about. I've had the great pleasure and honor when I returned from the Yukon 9 years ago to be able to become part of this program as a mental health lead for our local school board. And I have learned so much. But now we're taking all this knowledge and we're teaching kids, and we're finding ways of teaching kids and staff, educators, everyone all the way along how to stay well, be well. What are the basics that we can all practice? And how can we all, for the adults, be caring adults towards the children, and really encourage the kids to seek help, come to us, and get help sooner rather than later, but also give them tips for how to prevent mental health distress, how to stay well, and how to stay healthy. So it's a pretty exciting time during our province, in our province during this time. And as a second slide to that, there's lots of things that are key, we call nuggets underneath. We talk to kids about gratitude. Maybe some of us remember the old phrase, count your blessings. Well, this is just a new rebrand for the year 2021, but it is about looking at what's going right rather than wrong, counting our blessings, being thankful, being grateful, telling people we care about that we appreciate what they're doing. Having gratitude walks, mindful walks. Aren't we fortunate to live in beautiful Grey and Bruce counties? I want to reference on the side to happiness. Like, how do we get it? How do we keep it? So, I don't know whether any of you have ever won a lottery or know anybody that has, and you don't have to disclose if you have. But we know even from the research, a lucky lottery only gives temporary boost to happiness. And then we return to where we were pre-lottery, to our baseline. Sustained happiness takes work. We have to be mindful of it. We have to practice it, and we have to build in habits and what we know to be true, to be helpful, to keep happiness. And when we hit a roadblock or a lemon hits us, we have to be mindful of, what do I need to do to take care of myself? Do I need that long hike? Do I need to go down to the water and watch a sunset? Do I need to be out in my garden? Do I need to make my family a nice meal just so all of us can feel connected? There's all sorts of simple ways that we can continue to reinforce happiness. And down at the bottom of that little green box is a site called therapistaid.com. And I'd like to just reference that. If you're looking for any resources on anxiety, depression, strategies, tip sheets for you or your loved ones, that's a wonderful site. It's worth checking out. Did someone want to say something? No? We'll give you an opportunity at the end to comment as well. So I've thrown out this word mindfulness. What is it? I think a picture is worth 1,000 words, isn't it? Have a look at the picture. Where would you fall? Where would you fall at different parts of your day? Where would you fall when you're out for a hike, as Terry was describing as we started this program? See the difference? Multitasking is way overrated. In fact, we found that multitasking is actually harmful to the brain and what it leads to. And women, of course, have traditionally been praised for being such marvelous multitaskers, right? So what we know for sure now is that's not a good thing. We need to give our focused attention on one task at a time. And that means being present in the moment, Part of mindfulness is also being non-judgmental for self and others, expressing gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, empathy. And what all of these emotions and does is it activates a special part in our brain. There's a part of our brain that is connected to feeling safe, feeling loved, and feeling connected. And we go from thinking about me to we. And this is something that in schools we call social emotional skills. But really, social emotional skills are about lifetime. But we are teaching them more deliberately now with kids in schools. A little bit more about mindfulness. There's a psychiatrist, Dr. Dan Ziegler. I've had a chance to attend a few of his webinars. He's an absolutely amazing, brilliant man who's a psychiatrist for children and youth and families. And he spent a lot of his lifetime studying attachment theory, how we bond when we're babies to our caregivers, and how that impacts us throughout life. He's also done a lot of work on mindfulness. And with the advent of modern technology and science like MRIs, CAT scans, we have learned a lot more about the brain, things we never knew. And basically, if you think of the brain as kind of a big hunk of plasticine that you can shape and mold and change, it's called plasticity. We have found that regardless of where you're at in the lifespan, our brain is very much changeable. What we put in, we can get out. What we attenuate, what we focus on makes a difference. It will shoot out new neural pathways. So I don't know about you, but there's certain puzzles, games, etc., that I will use to keep my mind active and keep growing those neural pathways. Learning a new musical instrument, learning a new language at any age, learning new content like being here today is all about exercising the brain, and it's but one more muscle in our body. When we practice mindfulness, we change our brain structure. MRIs show us that. They've done brain scans pre and post people engaging in mindfulness. And guess what? It just takes practice. It's free and we can do it anytime, anywhere. Another favorite professor of mine who I've met through webinars is Dr. Richie Davidson from the University of Wisconsin. And he has another recipe. He says there's 4 constituents of well-being, what we need. Resiliency. And resiliency is really about our ability to bounce back, like from a pandemic. Being able to savor positive emotion, stay with the moment. When you are watching your puppy play and you're laughing your face off, let's stay with that moment. Don't think about what am I going to make for supper tonight? Oh, I forgot to call Aunt Ethel. I better get on that. Oh, that's when the mind starts to go. To be able to focus on one thing at a time is what we know refreshes our brain and makes us feel good in our hearts. And when our mind wanders and our attention is going everywhere, a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. We need to be able to gently bring it back, non-judgmentally, and say, I'm going to be in the present. I am in the present with the women of the Women's Institute right now. I'm not thinking about anything about except what I'm presenting and what you're presenting back to me. Kindness and generosity. These may all seem like very familiar values and beliefs that many of us were taught through other institutions. But you see, we're just kind of circling around in a secular way to make this good for all, because sometimes our old institutions aren't reaching all the people we need them to reach. So that's why we're doing the research. We're looking at the core golden nuggets and package them really in a way that's good for all and showing that it does work through the research and through our science. And we have to practice. There's Dan Siegel. And what I love about how the neurosciences have changed our views. You may know, or you may have heard, that prenatal to the first 5 years of life is critical for lifelong learning and success. And we all believe that. I mean, I've been taught a lot about attachment theory, attachment dysfunction, attachment problems for children and youth. The wonderful news is that can change at any point in our life with good, healthy, solid relationships. When we change our brain, we change our lives. So we know there are specific things we can do to help children and youth or adults who have had challenging early beginnings that will change how they think, how they feel, and therefore how they behave. But it needs to be intentional and well designed. And I think that's the best news and the best science coming forward. And in fact, one of the things I'm doing now is I'm investigating and doing some extra training on new protocols that are coming down that involve music attenuating the middle ear and how that's changing how we think and how we feel in a non-intrusive way. There's exciting developments in science coming. If we change our brain, we will change our minds. We'll change how we feel. And we know that we can do that now. And we're becoming much more deliberate in how we do that. Relationships are key too. That's why therapy works. A lot of therapy is giving people the experience of having a different kind of non-judgmental, supportive, kind, with gentle prods along the way relationships. But the bottom line is relationships and when we are seen, safe, soothed, and secure, whether that's friends, family, intimate partners, neighbors, that's what helps us feel connected and to grow versus fight, flight, freeze, or faint. They're actually two different parts of our brain. And what we want to do and what we're learning to do more in the science field is to be able to activate that seen, safe, soothed, secure part of a person's brain so that they can relax, so they don't automatically go into fight or flight. And we know mindfulness definitely helps retune that safe and secure part of our brain. It's a form of reparenting ourselves. Isn't that great? Or our friends reparent us too. So we have a little video we want to show you, give you a break from my voice. And it just is kind of a fun little video that shows you, kind of describes mindfulness. I hope you enjoy it.
You may have heard this word mindfulness. It's become something of a buzz phrase of late. I'm going to give you one simple, serviceable definition, which is this. Mindfulness is the ability to know what's happening in your head at any given moment without getting carried away by it. Imagine how useful this could be. Just as an example, you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off in traffic. How do you normally react? I think most of us, we normally react by having a thought, which is, I'm pissed. And then what happens next? You immediately, habitually, reflexively inhabit that thought. You actually become pissed. There's no buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. With just a little bit of mindfulness, in that same situation, you might notice my chest is buzzing, my ears are turning red, I'm having a starburst of self-righteous thoughts, I'm getting angry. But you don't necessarily have to act on it and chase that person down the road, screaming at them with your kids in the back of the car thinking you've gone nuts. Now, you might be thinking, don't I need to get angry sometimes? Aren't I justified? I would say yes, but probably not as much as you think. The proposition here is not that you should be rendered by mindfulness into some lifeless, non-judgmental blob. The proposition is that you should learn how to respond wisely to things that happen to you, rather than just reacting blindly. And that, my friends, is a superpower. How do you get it? The way to get it is through meditation. I believe that meditation and mindfulness are the next big public health revolution. In the 1940s, if you told somebody you were going running, they would have said, who's chasing you? But then what happened next? The scientists swooped in, they showed that physical exercise is really good for you, And now all of us do it, and if we don't, we feel guilty about it. And that's where I think we're headed with mindfulness and meditation. It's going to join the pantheon of no-brainers like brushing your teeth, eating well, and taking the meds your doctor prescribed for you. Let me just close by saying, mindfulness is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not going to render your life a nonstop parade of unicorns and rainbows. Nonetheless, this is a superpower, and one that is accessible by you immediately.
Something to think about, eh? There was a time running, physical activity, brushing our teeth wasn't the norm. As we learn and we grow. And I just want to comment, he talks about mindfulness being meditation, and you see a yoga position. Mindfulness is not just that. Mindfulness can be your nature walk and gently bringing your mind back to focusing on nature. When I worked in the Yukon, I had a wonderful office right beside the Yukon River. And I would go out on my lunch break and go to walk along the river. And I could do a nice big loop. Halfway up a mountain, I could cut through the woods a bit. And there was a meditation bench where I could just sit and reflect and collect my thoughts for a few minutes. I did think about bears every once in a while, but I tried not to make that my focal point. But what I would do is I give myself 2 blocks to think about my morning at work, then to clear my head. And then I would notice the flowers in the spring and summer. I remember counting over 55 different wildflowers as I'm having my walk, or noticing the trees changing, noticing the current in the river, just noticing and being present and breathing, being very aware of the breath and taking nice deep breaths. So mindfulness can be practiced in many different ways. Being mindful when we eat to actually taste the flavor and sensation of the food is another form of mindfulness. So we know there's many benefits to mindfulness. It leads to living happier, more fulfilling lives. It helps with anxiety, insomnia, paying attention, our resilience, and our self-regulation or emotional regulation. It's also found to increase the gray matter and cortical thickness in our brain. All a good thing as we get, especially as we age. And it trains us how to notice any shift in our unhelpful cognitive or thinking routines. It trains us to think about when we're becoming critical or judgmental of ourselves or others. This isn't the end of the slideshow. When I reviewed this today, it looks like the end. But it is a reference, and this is taken from my pal. Jackie Ralph is a CMHA health promoter, Canadian Mental Health Association promoter. She's also a Safe Talk trainer, which is suicide prevention training, a mental health first aid instructor. And Jackie is our kind of Wonder Woman dynamo in Grey and Bruce County for Canadian Mental Health Association. She brings lots of programs to everyone on the whole age span of life. She does a lot for our schools, coming in and teaching kids and our staff, educators, about mental health and well-being. But she also does lots of groups for seniors or retirees or farmers. She's always reaching out, and she's the kind of person who just seems to be everywhere simultaneously. That's why I call her Wonder Woman. But Jackie has a few pointers for us that, with her permission, I'm sharing as well. In all your locations, there will be a Canadian Mental Health Association. Check out their websites in your area. So one program in Ontario is called Bounce Back, and that's for folks struggling with mild to moderate anxiety, depression. This is a total online program that you can access without a doctor's referral. However, they do require a doctor or nurse practitioner's name because they like to close the loop and share information back with your medical provider. So what it is you get basically a coach to help you deal with mood, depression, help you with unhelpful thinking. If you want to become more active and assertive, if you're stuck on a certain problem, they will help you work that out. And it's all online, all virtual. And then they let your doctor and or your nurse practitioner know, so that everybody's working together to support a person. We also have mental health crisis line. In Grey Bruce, this is the crisis line. This is not 911. This is when you need to talk. No problem too big, too small. Or if you're struggling or worried about someone in your family or a friend, this is a line where you can talk to a trained counselor and also learn about resources that might be able to help the person you're worried about or your loved one. And more hospitals are paying attention when folks show up at emergency because the distress becomes so high. We in Grey and Bruce County, we have a special room now at Owen Sound Hospital it's participant friendly. It's not a stark waiting room. There are supportive counselors, there's peer support programs, and to help with mental health and addictions, to connect folks to the proper programs. There are more and more services becoming available for children and families too, that they don't have to wait lengthy periods of time to connect with a social worker. So it's really moving to a model of compassion and connection and really helping people get the services that they need sooner versus later, without stigma, without judgment. So I'm just going to pause here for a minute, and because this is my last slide, and just to allow you, if you'd like to make any comments or concerns, if you'd like to share your own resiliency strategies, where you see yourself going, and how any concerns or strategies you have for moving forward with resilience as we come into a new era.
So if you want to, you can comment in the chat if you've been able to find that little spot. If you are comfortable in just turning off or unmuting your microphone and sharing some ideas or sharing some things at this point in time, this would be a great time. You can ask Renes some questions as well if you'd like to do that. So whatever anybody wants to say.
I'd like to just make a comment.
Go ahead.
I found prior to all of this COVID stuff, I was quite what I would say, working on my art, and felt like I was progressing in my art skills and so on. And I felt like I had some kind of a goal. And the more this goes on, the COVID goes on, I have given up my art. I just can't even get into it. And I don't feel like I have a goal. I just kind of feel like every day I get up, it's the same old, same old. And I kind of feel flat. I don't know how to explain it other than that. And it's really hard to get out of that because, as I said, you know, it's you can't go anywhere. I mean, I'm in my garden a lot, but it's just a horrible feeling. Have you got any suggestions about something like that?
So it sounds like, Terry, you've lost some of your passion for your previous interests.
Yes.
So what fed your passion in the past?
I don't exactly know. I mean, I love the outdoors, and even now I take photographs and I take a long look at different things, and I really appreciate what I see. And I think, oh, I'd love to paint that. And then I don't do it. It's like, I don't know. It's like I get stuck. I'm stuck, you know, it's just strange.
If I think, if I think about like doing something at that level, creating art, music, those are higher level functionings. So I would look to the foundation, kind of like, in order for you to produce at that higher level, or what Abraham Maslow, a previous psychology professor, talks about, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's at the self-actualization level. That's the peak. That means like you have arrived, girl, and all your other basic needs are being met. You may want to reflect on what other basic needs further down are not being met. And as per Martin Seligman's recipe, Are you getting enough connection? Are you getting enough social time? Who's feeding you so the artist can feed her art?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how is your pot getting filled up? How are you
Mm-hmm.
coming home at the end of the day and feeling like, oh, that was great to have a connection with so and so? In the
Mm-hmm.
past, it might have been, you know, I went out and had a coffee with my weekly coffee with Jane. Oh, I so appreciate that. It's so great. She always makes me laugh. She always builds me up. She always, whatever. So you want to look at your foundation too. Where are your needs not being met? Because if you're trying to achieve something at a very high level, the implication is maybe something on the foundational level is getting missed and you're just drained because you're not getting your pot refilled.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to be
Exactly.
expressive. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does. And it just brought to mind one of the things I definitely am missing. And it was a weekly get together with other artists where we used to we just paint. It didn't matter well about what we were doing, and we'd help each other. And I miss that so terribly. And it just, I guess they were kind of like my they gave me initiative to get going on something. So,
Awesome.
you
And
know.
you know what? That's actually a really good strategy, even around physical exercise. I recall last year, Tara and I ran a youth group together towards the end of a school year, and
Mhm.
we were all talking about physical activity. And I was saying, I'm sitting too much. And one of the girls in the group said, well, Rene, you need to be exercising 3 or 4 times a week. And we're going to check in with you to make sure that happens next week. Having some supports and coaches in the background and saying, okay, like just even try, half an
Mhm.
hour twice a week to get that paintbrush in your hand again
Mhm.
and to fill your mind with positive thoughts versus not the negative, I can't do this. What's the point? The pessimism, but the
Mhm.
optimism. I'm still growing. I hit the pause button and now I'm going to hit the release button and embrace my art again, because that's something that gives me joy. But it sounds like you need to connect with your buddies too, because they fed your pot and they gave you through connection, they gave you inspiration.
I think so.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Terry. That's a wonderful example.
Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to share or questions that they'd like to ask?
Okay, it's the other Terry. I have a question regarding, how you were saying about meditation, how it, builds your gray matter, blah, blah, blah. Is it the same if you're just like, I've taken a meditation class, but then when I meditate, I frequently do it with a guided meditation. Sarah Raymond, I don't know if you know her or not, really marvelous for meditation. There's on healing, on all sorts of topics. But is that as much value, the guided meditation, as it is where you just sit quiet, in silence and focus on something? I guess I've been wondering about that for a while.
I think that's a very interesting point you're raising, Terry. I've never quite thought of it that way. I think the silence and the focusing on the breath from everything I've studied and being very mindful and breathing, I mean, that's key to all of it. But I've gone to meditation conferences and such where I've been in audiences where they've done an hour-long meditation, usually with some pausing for that deep breathing and focusing. And those meditations have felt like 5 minutes, quite honestly. I think it's a very personalized thing. Some people really need the guide to help stay focused, but I also wonder if that might be more foundational. For some, it might be a preference. For some, it might be that takes them to the deeper place of practicing it without that external brain given the guide or the map of how to do it. So I would think there's not one right way of doing it. And I know to talk in speaking with other meditation practitioners, we all do it different. Some people like lotus position, some like lying down, different times of day, night, middle of the night. Um, that's kind of the beauty of meditation too. There's no one right or wrong answer. I think it's very personalized. It's what works for you and what gives you the benefit of feeling those feelings. You could try a comparison. You could try doing it on your own versus a guided meditation and see if you personally experience anything differently.
And thank you. I wasn't thinking necessarily like which is more, it was more the physiological benefit that I was wondering about of the two comparative. But I think the guided meditation personally is easier to go through than your own silent meditation and settling the monkey brain. So anyway, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know that the research has shown any difference when I think of some of the scientists and neurologists that I've heard speak. It's the practice and it's the regularity of the practice that seems to make a significant difference. Any other thoughts?
Can I speak again, the other Terry?
Sure, Tim.
Just wanted to let you know, one of the things that I've been doing, that every night I write in my journal, and I write down what I've done during the day, if I can remember it sequentially, which often I can't, but it reminds me to be thankful, to be grateful. I also put down things so that I don't have to think about them before I go to bed. In other words, tomorrow I have to do A, B, C, and D. And then when I put that pen down and put it away, I can sleep. And it's been very good for me. And I've been doing that since my husband died about 2.5 years ago. And I've done it since then. And it's just part of my routine. I have to do it. Anyway, it is positive.
Wonderful. I love the gratitude exercise, and also, as the other Terry said, monkey brain, getting it down on paper and saying, okay, now I can let it go. I've dealt with that. I can let it go. I free my mind up to be able to rest and restore in peace. That's a mindfulness exercise. Any other closing thoughts? When I was in high school, I remember reading this book, Jonathan Livingston Siegel. Did anybody else here read that? And it was about a seagull. Actually, it was about this seagull and his flying higher and higher and higher. It's on my book list to read again this summer. Linda, you read it, did you? You're on mute, Linda.
Great. Yes, I did read it more than once, I might say.
Yes.
But I haven't picked it up again since that. I haven't reread it. Read it hard in high school, but left it there.
Yeah, but it really is metaphorical for life. And there's one particular quote that I'd like to share with you as we complete our time together today. And written by Richard Bach. Jonathan Siegel discovered that boredom, fear, and anger are the reasons a gull's life is so short. And with this gone from his thought, he lived a long, fine life indeed. Just something to think about.
Thanks so much, Rene, for all of your words of wisdom and all of the strategies and the tools that you've been able to share with us. I'm sorry, and I've really learned a lot of things. I think it's great that I've got some tools now that I can go and use when I have some of those sort of feelings of being overwhelmed and not really knowing where to turn and what to do next. So that's really great, and I think it's wonderful that we've all been able to find ways to manage our social anxiety and the things that we've been dealing with all the way through this pandemic, and hopefully as we move forward and people get vaccinated and we're able to move out into the community again, we're able to find new ways to kind of connect with one another that are meaningful and sort of express some of that really that importance that we can now understand is part of being in a social community. So yeah, thanks very much.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
look
Thank you.
forward to us opening up again and going to the Women's Institute for some more wonderful concerts. I'm
Oh,
just
yeah.
down the road from you in Lion's Head, and that last Christmas concert that I attended, I can't remember the name of the group.
Carp and
Uh,
Holly.
yeah, yeah. That was so amazingly beautiful. So I look forward to coming to more of your concerts, and hopefully we'll see some of you there.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I
Rene.
I know that our first concert is going to be a kitchen party with the Becketts, so I'm really excited about that whenever it happens. So just
Awesome.
waiting
That'll
sort of
be awesome.
impatiently for that to take place. And I'm just going to point out, I think everybody here knows this already, but just for posterity, that that having this presentation was very much due in part to a seniors community grant that we were able to get from the government of Ontario, and so we thank them for their support, and they're also responsible for us having internet at the hall now too. So that's really wonderful. But and then also thank you again to you, Rene, for all of your help and your support. So
Anytime, and hope to cross paths with you folks again.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take
everyone
care,
for
Thanks,
coming.
everyone.
Bye.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
the rest of your afternoon.
Bye.